Today we have Shireen Nariman with us. She's a political prisoner in Iran who was once buried up to her head and neck at one point. Shireen, can't even imagine. You've been tortured. You have now moved to the United States. Welcome here. Welcome home. But I want to tell your story because I really don't think, we talk about this all the time. I really don't think Americans truly understand what life is like under this terroristic regime. Shireen, I was watching the press briefing. We just saw a clip of that from yesterday. And the media seems to ask the same questions over and over again every single day with Senator Rubio, with Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, with President Trump. And they can't emphasize enough. It's almost like a broken record. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And this is the only president who was brave enough to go in and take care of it. So I'm happy to have you on today to tell your story because, we hear from the press who can't get it through their heads of why this is such a big deal, an important deal, and it needs to be done, but also the American people who truly don't understand. So let's start with your story of how you were once tortured.
Good morning. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to be with you and share my experiences and also my vision for the future of Iran. So I was 16 when I was arrested. I was a high school senior at the high school. I was arrested in my house. Not that I did anything wrong. It was just that I was supporting Mujahideen Khalq MEK. And even then, when we still had semi-democracy in Iran, it was not acceptable by the Iranian regime. So unfortunately, in the 2 years that I was in prison, I had to learn to grow up quickly and to learn how to hold my tears when they were taking my friends for executions. And I had to go through a horrible experience. I was, as you said, I was once, not once, few times I was severely tortured, and once I was buried up to my neck, and then they played Russian roulette on my head. So in freezing cold of February, just you can imagine how things were. But I think what you always forget what you endured physically, and what has remained with me all these years, and unfortunately to this day, is when they would take people, they would call out every afternoon, they would call out a list. And that list meant that they are taken for executions. So we know what was their final, destiny is. And back then they used to have to execute by the firing squad. So they would take them literally behind the walls and execute them. And they used the last shot, which is the coup de grace, to their head. And by counting those, we knew how many people were executed that night. The worst part was when a friend or someone who you knew would call, they would call them and you had to say goodbye to that person and promising them that you would never forget them and you will continue the path for freedom and democracy. And unfortunately, it's been going on for past 47 years. Every morning now, we are waking up with seeing the news of that someone has been executed in Iran, someone was hanged, and that is the worst thing that I'm dealing with right now. I'm still fighting my tears when I see these pictures and these people that have been hanged as young as 18 years old. And what is their crime? The crime is just standing up to the regime. They having the aspiration for freedom. They wanted to see freedom, democracy in Iran. They're not asking for so much. Of course, 8 of them were members of MEK, Mujahideen Khalq, that they were executed. But out of the 21, the rest were people that were arrested during the January uprising. I want to bring the attention of the American people that just in January, we had the mass execution, mass killing of people, innocent people who came out to the street just for freedom and for having a better life. and many of them were arrested. According to the UN, more than 4,000 have been arrested just during the war. Just during the war, not before that, not during the uprising, January uprising. And we hear from the Chief Justice of Iran, Mohseni Ejei, that he's, very bluntly, he says, we have to execute every day. They're doing this just to intimidate people, to scare people so they would not rise up again. But we know rising up is again on the horizon, and it's going to happen. So I want everybody to know that right now, as we are speaking, a young man, a young woman is awaiting for being called out for executions. And that's what's still bugging me, and is still hurting me, and is still day and night I think about them. And there is no way I can distance myself from what is going on inside of Iran.
I can't even imagine. It's so sad to hear what you've gone through, what the people of Iran have gone through. Again, we've heard from so many people, and I feel, Shireen, I was just at CPAC a couple of weeks ago in Dallas, Texas, and there was a huge international crowd there this year that I hadn't seen in past years, and a lot of Iranian people, and women specifically, who would come to the LindellTV booth, and they were ready to talk. They were ready to tell their story, and they feel like now they can, whereas in years past they couldn't. And to hear these women and hear their stories of what they've been through, what their family members have been through, it's just hard to fathom that that's the reality in another country, because in America we don't see that. And again, like I mentioned earlier, it's hard for Americans to truly comprehend just how terrible it is there.